That night, Kilthar sat alone in his private office on the top level of the space station. The office was huge and filled with expensive art from dozens of different worlds. Large windows showed the stars and the ships that came and went from the station. But Kilthar was not looking at any of these things. He was looking at files on his computer, and what he saw there made him feel sick. The mining accident that killed Jiho's parents had happened on a small moon called Kepler 442c. The mine there was owned by Galactic Mining Solutions, which was owned by Kilthar. He had bought the company because it made good money, but he had never looked closely at how it made that money. Now he was looking, and he did not like what he found. The mine on Kepler 442c was old and dangerous. The safety equipment had not been updated in 10 years. The air filters were broken half the time. The workers put in 12-hour shifts every day with only 1 day off each month. The accident report said that a gas pocket had exploded because the workers did not have the right tools to detect dangerous gases. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was the memo he found from the mine manager, dated 1 week before the accident. The manager had asked for money to buy new safety equipment and hire more workers. The request had been denied because profit margins were already thin enough. Kilthar's hands shook as he read the names of the people who had died in the explosion. Kim Dae-hyun, age 45, engineer. Kim So-min, age 43, equipment operator. 15 other names that meant nothing to him, but had probably meant everything to their families. He opened another file and looked at the compensation payments. Each family had received exactly 5,000 credits. That was barely enough to pay for a funeral and maybe rent for 2 months. For comparison, Kilthar made more than 5,000 credits every 10 minutes, even when he was sleeping. There was a soft knock on his office door. "Come in," he said without looking up. Vashitar entered the room carrying a data pad and looking irritated. "Sir, you canceled 4 important meetings today. The board of directors is asking questions. They want to know why you are suddenly interested in one human worker." "Sit down," Kilthar said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. Vashitar sat, but he looked uncomfortable. "Sir, if this is about the human with the bracelet, I can have him transferred to another job. Or we can fire him if he is causing problems." "Tell me about Galactic Mining Solutions," Kilthar said. "It is one of our smaller companies. We bought it 15 years ago for 2.2 million credits. It now generates about 50 million credits in profit each year. The profit margins are excellent because the operating costs are very low." "Why are the operating costs so low?" Vashtar looked at his datapad. "The company uses mostly human workers, who work for less money than other species. They also save money by using older equipment and less expensive safety systems. The human workers do not complain much, so it is easy to maintain high productivity." Kilthar pulled up the accident report on his screen and turned it so Vashitar could see it. 17 people died in this mine 5 years ago. One of them was the father of the human we met today. Another was his mother. Vashtar looked at the report for a few seconds, then shrugged. "Mining accidents happen sometimes, sir. It is unfortunate, but it is part of the business. The insurance covered most of the costs." "The insurance covered the cost of replacing the equipment," Kilthar said. "What about the cost of replacing the people?" "Sir, humans are easy to replace. There are always more humans looking for work, and the compensation payments were within legal limits." Kilthar stared at his assistant for a long time. Vashtar had been working for him for 8 years, and he had always been efficient and loyal. But Kilthar was seeing him clearly for the first time. Vashtar looked at humans the same way he looked at mining equipment, useful tools that could be replaced when they broke. "I want you to compile a full report on all our mining operations," Kilthar said. "I want to know about every accident, every injury, every safety violation, and every compensation payment in the last 10 years. Vashitar's 4 eyes widened. "Sir, that would be thousands of files. It would take weeks to compile such a report. And I do not understand why you need this information. Our mining operations are profitable and legal." "Legal does not always mean right," Kilthar said quietly. "Sir, with respect, you have never cared about such things before. What has changed?" Kilthar looked out the window at the space station's lower levels where the human workers lived. He could not see them from up here, but he knew they were there. Thousands of them living in small rooms and working dangerous jobs for very little money. "I want you to arrange a tour," he said. "I want to see the human living areas." "That is not a good idea, sir. The human areas are dirty and smell bad. There is nothing there that would interest you. I will decide what interests me. Vashtar made a note on his datapad, but he looked unhappy. Very well, sir. When would you like to take this tour? Tomorrow morning, and I want you to find out everything you can about Park Jiho. Where he lives, where he works, how much money he makes, what he does in his free time. Everything. May I ask why you are so interested in this particular human? Kilthar turned off his computer and stood up. He was tired, but he knew he would not be able to sleep. He reminds me of someone I used to know. After Vashatar left, Kilthar stood at his window and looked down at the lower levels of the station. Somewhere down there, Jiho was probably finishing his night job, loading cargo in the docking bays. In a few hours, he would go to his small room and sleep for a little while, then wake up and start his cleaning job all over again. Kilthar tried to imagine what Daehyun would think if he could see what his son's life had become. Daehyun had been a proud man who worked hard and took care of his family. He had treated Kilthar like a brother, even though they were from different species and different worlds. Now Daehyun's son was cleaning toilets and loading boxes for companies that Kilthar owned. Jiho worked 3 jobs just to pay for a room that was probably smaller than Kilthar's bathroom. And the money that paid for Jiho's small wages came from the profits of the same company that had killed his parents. Kilthar pressed his hand against the cool window glass. His crystal skin was glowing brighter than usual, something that happened when he felt strong emotions. He had not felt emotions this strong in many years. The next morning, Vashitar was waiting in Kilthar's office with the report he had requested. I have the information about the human, he said, handing over a datapad. Kilthar read through Jiho's file. The young man lived in room 347B in the human section of level 15. His room was 3 meters by 4 meters with a single bed, a small table, and a washing basin. He shared a bathroom with 6 other people. His 3 jobs paid him a total of 847 credits per month. His rent was 600 credits, which left him 247 credits for food, clothes, and everything else he needed. 7 credits per month, Kilthar said out loud. I spend more than that on lunch. Sir, that is actually better than most human workers, Vashitar said. Many of them make less money and live in smaller rooms. Show me. Vashitar led him to a transport tube that went down to level 15. As they descended, the air became warmer and more humid. The walls were made of cheaper metal, and the lights were dimmer. When the doors opened, Kilthar could smell something he had never smelled before, the smell of too many people living in too small a space. The human section was a maze of narrow corridors lined with tiny doors. The ceiling was low, designed for humans who were shorter than most aliens. Small children ran between the adults playing games with broken toys. Everyone wore the same gray work clothes and everyone looked tired. Most humans live 4 to a room, Vashitar explained as they walked through the corridors. But Jiho lives alone because he pays extra rent. He is considered wealthy by human standards. They stopped in front of room 347B. The door was thin metal with a simple lock. Through the walls, they could hear people talking, children crying, and machines humming. There was no privacy and no quiet. He is at work now, Vashitar said. He will not be back until late tonight. Kilthar looked around at the other doors, all identical, all hiding people who were just trying to survive. How many humans live on this level? About 3,000. There are 12 more levels like this one. 36,000 humans all living like this, all working for companies that Kilthar owned, directly or indirectly. All struggling to pay rent for rooms that were barely big enough for one person. I have seen enough, Kilthar said, but as they walked back toward the transport tube, he saw something that made him stop. There was a small medical clinic with a line of people waiting outside. Through the window, he could see a human doctor treating patients with equipment that looked very old and worn out. A sign on the door said, "Free clinic, donations welcome." What is that? Kilthar asked. Some of the humans run their own medical clinic. Our station medical facilities are too expensive for most human workers, so they take care of each other. It is not very good medical care, but it is better than nothing. Kilthar watched as the doctor carefully bandaged the hand of a worker who had been injured on the job. The doctor's movements were gentle and careful, just like he remembered from his time in the hospital on Haven's Rest. That was when he realized what he had to do. 6 months later, Captain Lee Hyun stood on the bridge of the Soul's Pride, watching his new crew work with quiet satisfaction. The ship hummed around him, every system running smoothly. Under the careful attention of people he was learning to trust again. It had been the hardest 6 months of his life. The first month, after firing, his entire crew had nearly killed him. Running a freight ship alone was technically possible, but practically suicidal. He had to plot courses, manage cargo, handle maintenance, and stay awake for dangerous stretches of space travel. He survived on stimulants and stubbornness, taking only the smallest, safest cargo runs. Other captains thought he was crazy. Word spread quickly through the freight community about the captain who had fired his entire crew for stealing. Most people shook their heads and predicted he would be dead within weeks. "You can't run a clean operation in this business," Captain Morrison had told him at Kepler Station. "Everyone steals a little. Everyone cuts corners. That's just how things work out here." But Hyun had refused to accept that. If the freight industry was corrupt, then someone had to start changing it. If everyone stole, then someone had to stop stealing. And if no one else would do it, he would. The first new crew member he hired was Park Min, a young woman from Mars Colony who had just graduated from engineering school. She was green, inexperienced, and eager to learn. More importantly, she was honest. "I've never worked on a freight ship before," she admitted during her interview. "But I've heard about what you did. Standing up to thieves, I mean. My father runs a small business on Mars, and he's always fighting corruption. He taught me that sometimes you have to take a stand even when it costs you." Min was nothing like Day. She asked questions instead of pretending to know everything. She documented every repair and replacement part. She volunteered for extra shifts and never complained about the long hours. The second hire was Lee Bo, a navigator who had been blacklisted from other ships for refusing to participate in illegal route-selling schemes. He was older than Jin, more experienced, and completely committed to legal operations. "I lost my last job for refusing to sell information to pirates," he told Hyun. "My captain said I was being naive, that everyone does it. But I couldn't sleep at night knowing that families were dying because of information I provided." Bo brought a methodical approach to navigation that impressed Hyun. He planned routes with backup options, filed proper reports with station authorities, and never made course changes without full documentation. For security chief, Hyun hired Kim Soo, a former military police officer who had left the service to care for her sick mother. She was small but tough, with a reputation for absolute honesty and fierce loyalty to anyone who earned her trust. "I've seen what corruption does to organizations," she said during her interview. "It starts small. Someone takes a little extra, someone looks the other way on minor violations. But it spreads like cancer. Pretty soon nobody trusts anybody, and the whole operation falls apart." Sue implemented security protocols that were stricter than anything Hyun had used before. Every cargo container was photographed before loading and after unloading. All security seals were documented with timestamps and video records. She maintained detailed logs of every person who accessed the cargo areas. The final crew member was Dr. Yoon Tae, a medic who had lost his previous job for refusing to falsify medical certificates for captains who wanted to avoid quarantine delays. "Medical integrity isn't negotiable," he explained. "If I lie about health conditions to save time or money, people die. I'd rather be unemployed than responsible for spreading disease or hiding medical emergencies." Tae brought a level of professionalism to the medical bay that impressed everyone. He maintained perfect inventory records, followed all health protocols, and never requested supplies he couldn't justify with proper documentation. The new crew worked differently than Hyun's old team. They questioned procedures, double-checked each other's work, and maintained detailed records of everything they did. They were slower at first, more cautious, but also more reliable. "It feels strange at first," Min admitted after their second run together, "being so careful about everything. But I sleep better at night knowing that everything we do is legal and honest. It's how things should be," Bo added. "I spent 10 years watching crews cut corners and steal from their captains. This is the first ship I've worked on where I don't have to worry about what my crewmates are doing behind my back." The change in atmosphere was remarkable. Instead of the casual camaraderie that had hidden betrayal, the soul's pride now had professional respect built on trust. The crew worked together not because they were friends, but because they shared the same values. Their reputation began to spread. Other ship captains noticed that the Soul's Pride always arrived on schedule with undamaged cargo. Station authorities began to trust Hyun's crew completely. often skipping the detailed inspections they required for other ships. More importantly, alien traders began specifically requesting human ships that followed the Sol model. Hyun learned this firsthand when he encountered Kira Velthani again at New Tokyo Station. The crystalline alien approached him in the same bar where they had first met, but this time her expression was approving. "Captain Hyun," she said, settling into the chair across from him, "I have been watching your progress with interest." "Watching how?" Hyun asked, though he wasn't really surprised. The Velthani seemed to keep track of everything that happened in the freight industry. "My people have contacts throughout this sector. We hear about ships that arrive on time, cargo that arrives undamaged, crews that can be trusted." She smiled, an expression that looked strange on her alien features. "Your name comes up frequently in these conversations. We're just doing our job." "No," Kira said firmly. "You are doing much more than that. You are setting an example." She activated a small device that projected a holographic display above their table. It showed shipping routes, delivery schedules, and cargo manifests from dozens of different ships. 6 months ago, theft and piracy in this sector were increasing every month. Ships were being attacked, cargo was disappearing, and trust between traders was breaking down. The display showed red indicators marking problem areas and failed deliveries. But something has changed recently. The display shifted to show more recent data. The red indicators were fewer, replaced by green symbols marking successful deliveries and satisfied clients. Human ships following your operational model have a success rate 15% higher than the sector average. Alien traders are beginning to request human crews specifically, especially for valuable cargo. Kira looked at him intently. "Your species is developing a reputation for reliability and honesty that we have never seen before." Hyun studied the data, amazed by what he was seeing. "Other captains are copying our methods?" "Some are. Others are improving their own operations to compete with you. A few are even firing crew members who refuse to meet higher standards." Kira's expression became serious. "Change is spreading through the human freight industry, Captain. And it started with your decision to fire 4 thieves. I just did what felt right. That is exactly why it is working. You did not calculate the costs and benefits. You did not compromise or look for middle ground. You simply chose to do the right thing, regardless of the consequences." Kira deactivated the holographic display and leaned back in her chair. "My people have been trading with dozens of species for centuries. We have seen many different approaches to commerce and cooperation, but what you humans are doing now is unusual." "How so?" "Most species accept a certain level of corruption as unavoidable. They build systems to manage it, control it, minimize its damage, but they never try to eliminate it completely." Her eyes glowed brighter. "Humans seem to believe that perfect honesty is actually possible. And more remarkably, you are willing to sacrifice everything to achieve it." "Not all humans," Hyun pointed out. "My old crew were human too." "Yes, but they were behaving like most other species, taking what they could get away with, justifying their actions as normal business practice." "You chose a different path." Kira stood to leave, then paused. "There is something else you should know, Captain. The Velthani Trade Consortium has been discussing new policies for selecting shipping partners. We are considering giving preference to human crews that meet certain integrity standards." "What kind of standards?" "Complete transparency in operations, zero tolerance for theft or corruption, detailed documentation of all procedures." She smiled again. "Standards based on your operational model." After she left, Hyun sat alone in the bar, thinking about what she had said. He had fired his crew because he couldn't stand being betrayed by people he trusted. He had never intended to start a movement or change an entire industry, but apparently that's exactly what had happened. Over the following months, Hyun continued to hear similar stories. Human freight crews were being held to higher standards throughout the sector. Some captains complained about the increased oversight and documentation requirements. Others embraced the changes and found that their operations became more profitable as they earned better reputations. The Sol's Pride became a model that other ships tried to copy. Hyun received requests from young crew members who wanted to work on an honest ship. 3 days later, Kilthar made a decision that would change everything. He put on simple clothes instead of his expensive business robes, and he went down to level 15 alone. Vashatar had tried to stop him, saying it was dangerous and beneath his dignity, but Kilthar had ignored him. He found Jiho at the end of his cleaning shift, sitting on a bench in one of the corridors. The young man looked exhausted. His gray work clothes were dirty and his hands were red and raw from the cleaning chemicals he used all day. "Hello," Kilthar said in his careful human language. Jiho looked up, surprised. "Sir, what are you doing here?" "I wanted to see where you live." Jiho stood up quickly and brushed dirt off his clothes. "I am sorry, sir. I did not know you were coming. I would have cleaned myself up." "You do not need to clean yourself for me," Kilthar said. "May I sit?" Jiho nodded and they both sat on the bench. Around them, other human workers walked by on their way home from their jobs. Some looked at Kilthar with curiosity, but most were too tired to pay attention to one more alien. "I have been thinking about the story you told me," Kilthar said, "about your parents and the alien they helped. My father always said it was the best thing that ever happened to him," Jiho said. "He said that helping someone from another world made him feel like he was part of something bigger." Kilthar looked around at the narrow corridor with its dim lights and thin walls. "Is this where you grew up?" "No, sir. I grew up on Haven's Rest where my parents lived. It was a beautiful place with green trees and blue skies. After they died, I had to come here to find work." "Do you miss it?" Jiho's eyes became sad. "Every day. But missing something does not bring it back. I have to live in the world as it is, not as I wish it could be." Those words reminded Kilthar of something Daehyun had said long ago. When Kilthar had complained about being stuck on a human world, Daehyun had told him that complaining about a situation did not change it. The only way to improve things was to work with what you had. "Would you like to see your room?" Jiho asked. "It is not much, but you are welcome to visit." Kilthar followed Jiho down the corridor to room 347B. Jiho opened the thin metal door and stepped inside. The room was exactly as small as the report had said, but it was very clean and organized. The single bed was made with neat corners. A few personal items sat on the small table. A picture of two humans who must have been his parents, a few books, and some tools for fixing machines. "This is everything I own," Jiho said simply. "It is not much, but it is mine." On the wall above the bed, Kilthar saw something that made his chest feel tight. It was a small drawing of a starship flying through space. The ship looked like the crystal ships that Kilthar's people built, though the details were not quite right. "Did you draw that?" he asked. "My father taught me. He said that someday I might see ships like that in real life and I should be ready to recognize them." Kilthar sat on the single chair, the only chair in the room. "Jiho, what do you think of the aliens who run this station?" Jiho was quiet for a moment, considering his answer carefully. "Some are kind and fair, others are not. But that is true of humans too. My father taught me that each person is different no matter what species they come from. Even the aliens who own the companies you work for. I do not know them personally, sir. I only know that they give me jobs so I can pay for food and shelter. That is more than I had when I first came here." Kilthar felt ashamed. Here was a young man whose parents had been killed by the carelessness of Kilthar's companies, who was forced to work 3 jobs just to survive, who lived in a room smaller than a closet, and he was still grateful for what little he had. "What would you do if you had more money?" Kilthar asked. Jiho thought about this. "I would like to help the people in the medical clinic. They need better equipment and more medicine, and I would like to send some money to Haven's Rest to help rebuild the town after the mining company left." "You would not spend it on yourself?" "What would I spend it on, sir? I have a place to sleep and enough food to eat. The people in the clinic have sick children and no money for medicine. That seems more important than anything I need." This was exactly the kind of thing Daehyun would have said. Even when Kilthar had been a stranger who crashed near their town, Daehyun and Soman had put his needs before their own comfort. There was a knock on the thin door. "Come in," Jiho called. A small human girl, maybe 6 years old, peeked into the room. "Jiho, my mama is sick again. Do you have any medicine?" Jiho immediately went to his small table and pulled out a bottle of pills. "Give her 2 of these with water," he said, handing the bottle to the girl. "And tell her I will check on her tomorrow." After the girl left, Kilthar asked, "Was that your medicine?" "I get headaches from the cleaning chemicals sometimes," Jiho said. "But I can work with headaches. Her mother cannot work when she is sick, and they need the money for food." Kilthar stood up. He was too tall for the small room, and he had to bend his head to avoid hitting the ceiling. "I need to tell you something, Jiho, something important." "Yes, sir?" "I am the alien your father helped 30 years ago. I am the one who gave him the memory bracelet. Jiho stared at him for a long moment. Then he looked down at the bracelet on his wrist. The blue crystal was glowing brighter than usual, as if it was reacting to being near its creator. Are you sure? Jiho asked quietly. In answer, Kilthar reached out and touched the memory crystal with one finger. Immediately, the room filled with images, ghostly pictures that appeared in the air around them. They showed a younger Kilthar lying in a hospital bed, being cared for by a human man and woman. They showed the moment when baby Jiho was born, and the blue tears that had fallen on his blanket. They showed Kilthar making the bracelet with his own hands, cutting each facet of the crystal with careful precision. My father, Jiho whispered, watching the images of his parents when they were young and happy. They saved my life, Kilthar said, and they taught me what it meant to be truly civilized. But I forgot those lessons. I became focused on money and power, and I stopped caring about individual people. The images faded, but the memory crystal continued to glow. Jiho looked up at Kilthar with tears in his eyes. You are really him? The friend from the stars? Yes, and I have failed your parents terribly. Kilthar told Jiho everything. About the mining company that had killed his parents. About the unsafe conditions and the denied safety requests. About the thousands of humans living in poverty, while Kilthar's companies made enormous profits. About the medical clinics that had no supplies and the workers who were treated like replaceable machines. When he finished, Jiho was quiet for a long time. Are you angry with me? Kilthar asked. No, Jiho said finally. My parents taught me that anger is like poison. It hurts the person who carries it more than the person it is meant for. Besides, you did not know what your companies were doing. But I should have known. It was my responsibility to know. Jiho stood up and walked to the small window. Outside, they could see the corridor where other human families lived in rooms just as small as this one. What are you going to do now? He asked. I do not know. I want to make things better. But if I change too much too quickly, my business partners will remove me from power. Then I will not be able to help anyone. Jiho turned back to face him. My father used to say that the longest journey begins with a single step. Maybe you do not have to change everything at once. What would you do? I would start with the people who need help the most. The medical clinic. The families with sick children. The workers in the most dangerous jobs. Help them first, then help others as you can. Kilthar looked around the tiny room. At the neat bed, the simple furniture, the drawing of a crystal ship on the wall. This young man had every reason to hate Kilthar and his companies. Instead, Jiho was offering advice on how to make things better. There is something else, Kilthar said. My business partners are suspicious about my interest in you. They think I am becoming weak and emotional. They may try to remove me from power and take control of my companies themselves. Would that be worse than things are now? Yes, much worse. Vashtar and the others see humans as nothing more than cheap labor. If they take control, conditions for your people will become even worse. Jiho sat back down on his bed. The mattress was thin and looked uncomfortable, but he did not seem to notice. Then we need to make sure that does not happen. We? My father made a promise to help you if you ever needed it. The bracelet was his way of keeping that promise even after his death. Now it is my turn to help. Kilthar felt his crystal skin begin to glow brighter. You would help me? After everything my companies have done to your people? Jiho touched the memory crystal bracelet on his wrist. My father said that holding grudges was like carrying heavy rocks in your pockets. They do not hurt your enemies. They just make it harder for you to walk. If you are truly sorry for what happened, and if you truly want to make things better, then yes, I will help you. Outside in the corridor, they could hear the sounds of families eating dinner and children playing games. These were the people Kilthar's decisions affected every day. These were the people he had ignored while he focused on profit reports and stock prices. I do not deserve your help, he said. Kilthar stared at the young human for a long time without speaking. The conference room was very quiet except for the soft hum of the space station's air systems. Vashtar looked angry and confused, but he did not say anything because his boss had not given him permission to speak. Yes, Kilthar finally said. Tell me the story. Jiho set down his cleaning cloth and looked at the bracelet on his wrist. The blue crystal seemed to glow a little brighter, as if it knew that something important was happening. My father told me this story many times when I was little, Jiho began. He said that 30 years ago, he and my mother lived on a small colony world called Haven's Rest. It was not a rich world, but the people there were happy. My father was an engineer who fixed machines, and my mother was going to have a baby soon. That baby was me. Kilthar's 4 eyes never moved away from Jiho's face. Every word the human said brought back memories that Kilthar had tried to forget. One day, Jiho continued, a strange ship crashed near their town. It was not like any ship the humans had ever seen before. It was made of crystal and metal, and it was broken very badly. Most people were afraid to go near it, but my father was not afraid. He said that someone might need help. 30 years ago, Kilthar had been young and full of dreams. He wanted to explore the galaxy and see worlds that no one from his people had ever visited. His father had given him a small ship and told him to be careful, but young Kilthar thought he knew everything. He had tried to fly through an asteroid field to save time, and his ship had been hit by 3 large rocks. The ship's crystal hull had cracked, and all his systems had failed. My father and some other men went to the crashed ship, Jiho said. Inside, they found someone who was hurt very badly. He was tall and thin, with skin like crystal that changed colors in the light. He had 4 eyes, and he was bleeding blue blood. Kilthar remembered waking up in that human hospital. Everything had hurt, and he could not speak their language. He had been so scared and angry. His people were proud and did not like to show weakness, especially not to aliens they had never met before. The alien was very sick for many days. Jiho continued. The human doctors did not know how to help him, because they had never seen his kind of people before. But my father and mother stayed with him every day. They brought him food and water. They tried to make him comfortable. My father even built special machines to help the alien breathe better. That was true. Daehyun had worked day and night to build air filters that could clean the atmosphere for Kilthar's different kind of lungs. Somin had made soft blankets and pillows to help him rest. They had both learned some words in his language so they could talk to him. After 2 weeks, the alien started to get better, Jiho said. He learned some human words, and my parents learned some of his words. They became friends. My father said the alien was very smart and very kind, even though he seemed sad about something. Kilthar had been sad because he thought his people would never find him. The crash had destroyed his communication system, and Haven's Rest was far away from any major space routes. He had thought he would die on that alien world, far from home and family. The alien stayed with my family for 3 months, Jiho continued. He helped my father fix machines around the town. He taught the human children about the stars and other worlds. And when I was born, he was there in the hospital with my parents. Kilthar remembered that day very clearly. He had never seen a human baby before. Jiho had been so small and red, with tiny fingers that grabbed onto anything they could reach. When the baby had grabbed Kilthar's finger, something had changed inside him. He had felt a warmth that had nothing to do with his crystal skin's natural glow. My father said the alien cried when he held me for the first time, Jiho said with a small smile. His people cried blue tears and they fell on my blanket. My mother said it was good luck. That was the day Kilthar had started to understand what humans called love. Not romantic love, but the deep caring that made people want to protect each other and help each other grow. His own people felt emotions, but they kept them private and controlled. Humans shared their feelings openly, and it made them stronger, not weaker. After 3 months, other aliens came looking for the crashed ship, Jiho continued. They found my family's town and took their friend home. But before he left, the alien gave my father this bracelet. He said it was made from memory crystal, and that it would remember everything that had happened during his time with our family. Kilthar remembered making that bracelet. He had worked for days to get the crystal cut just right. Memory crystal was the most precious thing his people had, and each piece could only be used once. Once it recorded memories, those memories would stay in the crystal forever. The alien told my father that the bracelet was a promise, Jiho said. If my family ever needed help, the bracelet would find him. He said that he would never forget the kindness my parents showed him, and that he would always consider them to be his true friends. Those words hit Kilthar like a punch in the stomach. He had made that promise with all his heart, believing that he would never forget the lessons Daehyun and Somin had taught him. But somewhere along the way he had forgotten. He had become focused on money and power, and he had stopped caring about individual people. What happened to your parents? Kilthar asked quietly. Jiho's face became sad. They died 5 years ago in a mining accident. The mine where my father worked had an explosion. 17 people died, including both my parents. The mining company said it was nobody's fault, and they gave the families a little bit of money. but it was not enough to live on for very long. Kilthar felt something cold and sharp in his chest. A mining accident. His company owned hundreds of mines across the galaxy, and accidents happened sometimes. Usually, he did not pay attention to the details. Accidents were just a cost of doing business. What was the name of the mining company? He asked, though he was afraid he already knew the answer. Galactic Mining Solutions, Jiho said. They have a big sign at the front of every mine. Galactic Mining Solutions was one of Kilthar's companies. He had bought it 15 years ago because it was cheap and made good profits. He had never visited any of its mines or met any of its workers. He just looked at the money reports every month and collected his share of the profits. After my parents died, I came here to find work, Jiho continued. The company gave me enough money to buy a ticket to the station, and they said there would be jobs here. I work cleaning offices during the day, loading cargo at night and fixing small machines when people need it. It is hard work, but I can pay for my room and buy food. Kilthar looked at the young man standing in front of him. Jiho was thin and tired, with hands that were rough from hard work. His clothes were old and patched in several places. This was the son of the people who had saved Kilthar's life and treated him like family. Why did you keep the bracelet? Kilthar asked. You could have sold it for enough money to live comfortably for several years. Jiho touched the crystal gently with his other hand. My father made me promise never to sell it. He said it was more than just valuable crystal. He said it contained the memory of the best part of his life, and that someday the alien who gave it to him might need to remember too. The best part of his life. Kilthar felt his crystal skin begin to glow brighter again. Dahyun had said that those 3 months were the best part of his life, even though he had just been helping a stranger who had crashed near his town. Did your father ever talk about the alien again? Kilthar asked. All the time, Jiho said with another small smile. He said the alien taught him that the galaxy was full of good people, even if they looked different from humans. He said that kindness was the most important thing in any language, and he said that if I ever met someone from the stars, I should treat them the same way he and my mother had treated their friend. Kilthar had to turn away and look out the window again. His 4 eyes were burning, and he could feel blue tears starting to form. He had built a business empire worth more money than most worlds would ever see, but he had forgotten the most important lesson Dahyun and Somin had ever taught him. Behind him, Vashtar cleared his throat impatiently. Sir, we still have 3 more meetings today. Should I send the human away now? Kilthar turned back to face Jiho. The young man was still standing there patiently, waiting to see what would happen next. Just like his parents had waited patiently by Kilthar's hospital bed 30 years ago. No, Kilthar said slowly. Cancel the meetings. I need to think about some things. The massive space station Omega-7 floated in the darkness of space like a giant metal city. Ships from hundreds of different worlds came and went every day. Inside its metal walls, aliens from across the galaxy did business, made deals, and traded goods worth more money than most planets would ever see. Kilthar Vex stood at the window of Conference Room 12, looking out at the endless black of space. His tall, thin body was covered in smooth, crystal-like skin that caught the light and threw it back in rainbow colors. 4 eyes sat on his narrow head, each one able to move on its own. Right now, all 4 eyes were focused on the financial reports floating in the air in front of him. The numbers were good. Very good. His mining company had just bought 3 more asteroid fields and 2 failing mining operations. Soon he would control most of the rare metal trade in this part of the galaxy. The thought should have made him happy, but Kilthar felt nothing. He had been making deals like this for 20 years, and each one felt the same as the last. Sir, the new mining operation reports are ready, said Vashitar Nex, his second in command. Vashitar was also from the same crystal people, but his skin was darker and his 4 eyes never seemed to blink. The humans are working well. Production is up 15% since we took over. Kilthar turned away from the window. Good, what about the other species? The bug people work fast but break too many tools. The fish people are strong but need too much water. Humans are the best workers. They do not complain much and they work until they die. Through the clear door of the conference room, Kilthar could see a young human cleaning the hallway outside. The human was thin and wore the gray clothes that all the low-level workers had to wear. His black hair was cut short and his face looked tired even though he could not be more than 20 years old. That one looks very young, Kilthar said, pointing with one of his long fingers. Vashatar barely looked. They all look the same to me. But yes, this one is new. His name is Park Jiho. He works 3 jobs to pay for his small room in the human section. Kilthar watched as Jiho moved from door to door, cleaning each one carefully. The human's movements were slow and careful, like someone who had learned that making mistakes meant not eating. There was something about the way the young man worked that reminded Kilthar of something, but he could not remember what. "Call him in," Kilthar said suddenly. "I want the room cleaned now." Vashatar looked surprised. "Sir, we are in the middle of important business. The room is already clean enough. I said call him in." Vashatar's 4 eyes narrowed, but he pressed a button on his wrist device. "Human worker, come into conference room 12 now." A few seconds later, the door slid open and Jiho stepped inside. He kept his eyes down and his hands at his sides. "You called for me, sir?" His voice was quiet and respectful. Kilthar studied the young man's face. There was something familiar about him, but that was impossible. All humans looked almost the same to most aliens, and Kilthar rarely paid attention to individual workers. "Clean the table," Kilthar said. "Make sure it shines." "Yes, sir." Jiho pulled out a small cloth and a bottle of cleaning liquid from his belt. He moved around the table, wiping down every surface with care. As Jiho worked, he raised his right arm to reach across the table. That was when Kilthar saw it. Around the human's thin wrist was a bracelet made of blue crystal. The crystal was cut in a very specific way, with 7 sides that caught the light and threw it back in patterns. Kilthar knew that crystal. He knew that bracelet. He had made it himself many years ago. All 4 of Kilthar's eyes focused on the bracelet at the same time. His crystal skin began to glow brighter, something that happened when his people felt strong emotions. The bracelet was definitely made from Velthari memory crystal, the most precious material his people knew how to work with. But this was not just any memory crystal. This specific piece had been cut and shaped by Kilthar's own hands 30 years ago. "Stop," Kilthar said, his voice much louder than before. Jiho froze, the cleaning cloth still in his hand. "Did I do something wrong, sir?" "Your bracelet. Where did you get it?" Jiho looked down at his wrist, then back up at Kilthar. His eyes were confused and a little scared. "It was my father's, sir. He gave it to me before he died." "Your father?" Kilthar stepped closer. The bracelet was definitely the one he remembered. The 7-sided cut. The way the crystal had a tiny crack on one side. The metal band that was made from a special alloy that could only be found on his home world. "What was your father's name?" "Kim Daehyun, sir." Jiho's voice was getting quieter. "Is there something wrong? I can take it off if it bothers you." Kim Daehyun. The name hit Kilthar like a physical blow. Memories came flooding back. Memories he had tried to forget for 20 years. A small human colony on a distant world. A crashed ship. Kind faces and gentle hands that had saved his life when he was young and foolish and far from home. Kilthar's 4 eyes were now staring so hard at Jiho that the young human began to back away toward the door. Vashtar was also staring, but his look was angry and suspicious. "Sir," Vashtar said in their own language, "why are you wasting time with this human? We have important work to do." But Kilthar was not listening to Vashatar anymore. He was looking at Jiho's face and seeing something he had not noticed before. The shape of the eyes, the way the mouth turned up slightly at the corners even when the human was scared. The same kind expression that he remembered from so long ago. "How did your father get this bracelet?" Kilthar asked, switching back to the common language that most species used for trade. Jiho looked like he wanted to run away, but he stayed where he was. He said a friend gave it to him. A friend from the stars. He said it was very important and that I should never sell it no matter how hungry I got. A friend from the stars. Kilthar remembered saying those exact words when he gave the bracelet to Daehyun. The memory crystal in the bracelet would have recorded everything. Every word, every emotion, every promise he had made that day. "This human is wasting our time," Vashatar said, switching back to their language. "Send him away so we can finish our business." But Kilthar held up one long finger to silence his assistant. He looked directly into Jiho's eyes and asked the question that would change everything. "Where did you get that bracelet?" he asked again, this time in broken human standard language. His voice was soft now, almost whisper quiet. Jiho stared back at him for a long moment. Then something seemed to change in the young man's face. Hope maybe, or recognition of something important happening. "My father said that if I ever met someone who recognized this bracelet, I should tell them the whole story, Jiho said slowly. Would you like to hear it, sir?